Yeah, it makes you want to go to sleep.
Right. Thanks, Patty.
Okay.
Well, this is probably going to surprise a lot of people, but Northern California was bombed repeatedly by the Japanese Army during World War II. 61 years ago tomorrow, those bombs took a deadly toll on one small town in southern Oregon. It was hushed up by the government and left out of most history books. But there are still people who vividly remember secret attacks, the bombs that fell on California. January 1945. A large balloon lifts off from the coast of Japan, carrying a payload of bombs. It crosses the Pacific in 3 days and quietly descends toward the town of Hayfork, west of Redding. Northern California was under attack by the Japanese Army. On a Wind and a Prayer is one of the first documentaries to tell the story of one of the best-kept secrets of World War II.
It looked like it was going to tie up right at the top of that tree.
John Rourke still remembers seeing the balloon fly low over his family's ranch outside Hayfork. The hydrogen balloon snagged in a tree and burst into flames. Fortunately for Hayfork, this bomb and 4 others didn't explode.
Boy, if one of those bombs had dropped right in our town, you know, and exploded, it could have done a lot of damage.
Hayfork survived an attack by the world's first intercontinental ballistic weapon.
The miracle to us is how they could get those things to come all the way from Japan and get here. You know, that was quite an accomplishment. And
the same day that balloon landed in Hayfork, one also landed in Red Bluff, and another one a week later outside Marysville. This balloon caught in power lines near Grimes, southwest of Yuba City. At least 22 balloon bombs hit Northern California, 40 in Oregon. According to declassified government documents, 300 balloons were found in the U.S. and Canada. The assault went on for 6 months, beginning in late 1944.
The launching sites were well hidden.
This film was taken after the war at one of the secret launch sites in Japan. 9,000 balloon bombs were sent into the sky. Most didn't survive the trip over the ocean, but hundreds of them did.
And the lethal weapons devised to harass an enemy across the Pacific.
Balloons crossed the Pacific in 3 to 4 days, riding the jet stream. When a balloon descended too low, sandbags would automatically drop, and the balloon would climb back into the jet stream. If everything worked as planned, by the time the balloon arrived over the West Coast, the only thing left to drop were the bombs.
Incendiaries and high explosive bombs caused some damage, but demolition squads were on constant alert.
The military quickly gathered up the pieces and told frightened residents not to talk about it.
They didn't want widespread panic, and I can understand that, you know. And these bombs were intended to come over here and cause wildland fire.
Newspapers and radio stations complied with a government request not to report anything about the balloon bomb attacks. Besides, no one had been killed or even injured. But that would all change tragically on May 5th, 1945, on this very spot just outside of Bly, Oregon. A local preacher, his pregnant wife, and 5 children from their church drove into the forest for a picnic. Reverend Archie Mitchell parked the car. His wife Elsie and the kids ran to see a strange object tangled in a tree. Other balloon bombs had been found snagged in trees. The Reverend Mitchell had even heard about these balloon bombs.
And so when his wife hollered, "Look what we found," he told her to wait, you know, and one of the kids touched it before he could get to him.
A 33-pound shrapnel bomb exploded. Local newspapers reported the tragedy, a preacher's wife and 5 children killed by a powerful explosion, but not a word about what caused the blast. Today, a monument in the forest marks the only place on the American continent where death resulted from enemy action during World War II.
We want people to be aware. You know, this was a tragic thing. People need to know, and they just don't.
2 weeks after the tragedy in Bly, the U.S. government ended the censorship. But Japan had already stopped the balloon assault. Because of the news blackout, Japan had no idea at the time that so many of the balloon bombs made it to the West Coast.
obviously, had they learned that it was being at all successful, they would have sent many, many more. I mean, it was a pretty cheap way to get to us, actually.
We just didn't think the Japanese would bother with a place like Hayfork.
It's believed that actually about 1,000 balloon bombs made it to the West Coast. Most of them, 600 or 700, were never found. Many of them could still be out there in the wilderness, some of them possibly even still dangerous.
Wow. Well, fascinating. Was there any major damage at all from any of these?
This was an incredible bit of luck on the part of the Japanese, but one bomb actually started a fire that cut power lines to the Hanford Works in the state of Washington, where plutonium was being processed for the Nagasaki atomic bomb. It actually took 3 days to get that plant up and running again.
Wow. Now, what about Reverend Mitchell? He survived the attack in Bly.
He survived the attack in Bly. Reverend Archie Mitchell later became a missionary to Vietnam. And in 1962, he was captured by Viet Cong. They walked him into the jungle, and he was never seen again.
Oh, man. Wow.
Incredibly
Fascinating.
tragic story.
Fascinating piece of history. Thanks, Tim. Well, cigarette smokers